Welcome to No Longer Conformed, my online preaching and teaching ministry. We're studying the book of Matthew, the first gospel. In this session, we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 to 46. Jesus' agony in the garden. The Garden of Gethsemane was the place of Jesus' arrest the night before he died on Calvary's cross for our sin. That garden event was the Lord's greatest struggle of his humanity. We all face struggles in this life. If not handled well, problems will create pressure that can end badly. We must balance pressure with release. Release into God's hands, where the problem can dissolve harmlessly. In Jesus' garden experience, as we look at it, it reveals three essentials of preparation for life's struggles. And let's look at those. First of all, these essentials of preparation for life struggles. First, develop an intimate support network. Matthew chapter 26, verse 36. And then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee. And he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." We need support for strength during difficult times. What do we do with the network of believers in our lives? Well, we keep them close. Sit here while I go and pray over there. We call them to prayer. Stay here and watch with me. There are times in life when we need support. When he experienced the agony of struggle, Jesus took with him only the three who had witnessed his glory in his transfiguration on the mountain. He left the other members of his support group further away. So what is the point? The Christians who are best prepared to suffer with Jesus are those who have seen his glory. We are better ready to handle a struggle when we've walked with Jesus in intimacy. Gethsemane the literal meaning is oil press. Jesus met there often with his disciples. It's just across the Kidron Valley from Jerusalem. The garden of ancient olive trees, it's there today. Judas would have been familiar with Jesus' habits and was able to find him there, even though Christ had not announced his intention to go there. Sorrowful even to death, it says. That's important to note. Jesus' sorrow had nothing to do with fear of men or the physical suffering of the cross. In a few hours, the full cup of God's wrath against sin would be his to drink. It's not easy to remain faithful when the winds of struggle begin to blow. Sometimes supporters let you down. The disciples let Jesus down. And yet, he took them with him. And Judas was included until he left the Passover meal. Jesus had his support network with him up to the end. And we're called to follow his example. Second, develop an allegiance to God's will for your life. Look at verse 39. He went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And then if you jump to verse 42, again, a second time, he went away and prayed, saying, "O Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done." And in 44, so he left them, went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. This cup, the cup was a symbol of divine wrath against sin in the Old Testament. Christ would bear the sin of many, and the fullness of divine wrath would fall on him. His anguish reflects the bitterness of that. How did Jesus handle the stress of that moment? Not as I will, but as you will. Jesus Christ, in his humanity, voluntarily surrendered his will to the will of the Father in all things, so that there would be no conflict between the divine will and his desires. What a lesson for us as his servants. John chapter 5, verse 30. I can of myself do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me. Everything Jesus did was dependent on the Father's word and will. He began to be sorrowful and never ceased to be until he surrendered fully to the Father's will. He prayed that, if possible, the cup might pass from him. But he also showed that he was ready to bear the entire load of suffering. He was willing to go through everything for our redemption, our salvation. According to this example of Christ, we must be prepared to drink the bitterest cup which God puts into our hands. Our human nature will struggle, but we must be willing to submit to God's will for our life. Our peace in moments of struggle is the reality that our salvation is in the hand of the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. And then third, develop an awareness of the enemy's strategies. Look at verse 40, 41. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, "What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And then verse 43, and he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And verse 45, then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Two of Satan's strategies can be seen here. Satan seeks to take advantage of our human nature, as he knows it's weak. And Satan encourages a false sense of security, which leads to false rest and sleep. The flesh is weak. This plea is a ministry moment. Jesus was well acquainted with the feeling of human infirmities, and yet without sin. At that very moment, he was engaged in a struggle against human passions, which, while not sinful in themselves, had to be surrendered to the Father's will if sin was to be avoided. The awareness that the flesh is weak is the beginning place of avoiding sin. We're all tempted, but we should always be afraid of entering into temptation. The only way to be safe from it is to watch and pray and continually look to the Lord. We need to be constantly alert to the enemy's traps of temptation, Because like a good fisherman, Satan baits his hook according to the appetite of the fish. Be prepared for life struggles. It is not if there will be a problem, but when they will come. Develop an intimate support network of believers, and allegiance to God's will for your life, and an awareness of the enemy's strategies. You have a great day.